Welcome back. I'm Gary Parr.
And I'm Christine Williams.
You're listening to Fiber Talk, the midweek show of that twice-weekly podcast for people who stab ground cloth with giant needles and big, thick thread.
Wow. That was very violent this time.
Oh, yeah. We're going right for the jugular. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Speak for yourself. I'm feeling rather peaceful today.
Okay, well, that's one of the two of us. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Good for you. I'm envious. So, okay, this is, well, first couple of little things here. Krista Gramer got home from Scotland with her busted up leg. A nurse.
Just like the soap opera.
I know, yeah. A nurse flew home with her.
Wow.
Now,
nice.
The rumor mill, the nurse apparently was male, and the rumor mill is churning, but I think we'll just, I think we'll just leave it there. I think, a little birdie said that I might mention that in the next podcast. Male nurse, 8-hour flight home, and just, but I don't know details, so I can't really talk.
Uh-huh.
All I can do is spark speculation.
Okay.
So we'll leave that there, and maybe Krista will fill us in on some of the details. If there are any. There may not be. Who knows?
Gotcha.
Debbie Rowley. I think well established that when it comes to county canvas work, you can get me to buy just about any Debbie Rowley piece, because big fan of what she does. So she posted today a small piece. She just finished a class at the Shining Needle Society.
I saw that.
Blaze.
Yes, I saw that.
Stitched in the blue colorway.
Mm-hmm. And immediately I had chart envy.
That makes two of us. Mm-hmm. Yep. So there's two colorways, and the original one, I'll pass. That blue one, I just about killed to get that one. But it's a teaching piece, and so I wrote to her to see if I could get the picture. So the picture will be with this podcast, just because I wanted to have the picture. And she said she'd be happy to do another class if there was interest. So, yeah. That's
we
beautiful.
We need to figure out where.
Well, through Shining Needle Society.
As long as we're talking about Debbie Rowley pieces, back right after I had my car accident, we had Debbie on the show, and I was talking about picking up Black Magic as and I jokingly called it my rehab piece.
Yes.
And Debbie's reaction was, "Oh, Christine, don't do that. That's terrible." And I kind of laughed it off, like, well, how can it be terrible? Like, this is going to be fine. And the gist of what she was saying was, this is a really, really, really hard piece. Like, don't do that to yourself. So I'm coming not to the close of it, but I would say, 80% of the way through. And you know what? She was right. It's a really, really, really tough piece. So what I thought was going to be difficult with it turned out not to be, and the things that I thought were going to be easy were not. So it's all stitch on black canvas, so that's kind of a pain because it's difficult to see. So that's a challenge. There are all these gigantic Jessicas, and that's just a challenge of counting because they're anchored in. Basically, you have to stitch little Smyrna crosses, and they have to be exactly perfectly where they need to be because that forms the circle that the Jessica then sits within, right? Are you following? Yep. So one tiny Smyrna cross off, and your circle is in a circle, and now your Jessica's off. So those sorts of things you had to be just utterly fastidious about getting completely perfect. So those things I expected to be challenging, but as long as care was taken, it would go okay, right?
Right.
There is so much cut work in this piece, and that's where it starts getting tough. Because some of the pieces you can cut and they do okay, and then there's one section where you cut out. It's a fairly large, maybe 3 inches by 2.5 inch section, and you leave just a few pieces of canvas, and then those get wrapped in threads, and then you kind of tie them together in almost like a V-shaped or like a diamond pattern. And somehow you're supposed to tie them together by threading a needle through the thing that you just wrapped.
Debbie,
Yeah.
that's inhumane.
It was inhumane. And the only thing that holds the edge that you've cut now is Rhodes squares. Rhodes, am I saying that right?
Yeah,
Because I
Rhodes,
never
yeah.
remember
Mhm.
that. Yes. So, but when you cut them, now the thing that evidently I cut one square too close. So now it's not cut any longer, right? So now my Rhodes squares are getting limp because there's nothing to hold them where they're supposed to be.
And there's nothing worse than a limp Rhodes square.
That's right. I know. I'm sure no one has ever described it that way. But once you cut out the section on the side that's holding all of the pieces in their orientation, now they're not, now all the pieces are all willy-nilly. So I may have found the one section of one piece where I may just take the entire section out and redo it.
Mm.
That may be the one time, because I can see what it's supposed to be, and I try to fix it, to make it look passable.
Yep.
But I think I can fix it to the point where it will look fine. And to anyone's eyes but yours and mine and Debbie's, it would look fine. Because it's black thread on black canvas, and who cares? But I care because I think I can fix it. So, because it's something as simple as, if you wrap the threads around this canvas a little looser, you'll be able to wind basically put this other thread that you have to use to tie everything together through it. But if you wrap it too tightly, it doesn't work. And then if you wrap it too loosely, then you can see your canvas through. So inhumane is exactly correct.
Well, I'm sure that Debbie would be happy to assist with your limp Rhodes squares and your willy-nilly stitching.
It's brutal. It is brutal. And then there's just this swaths of background stitches that are, it's brutal. So that said, the piece is really pretty.
Well, that's the trouble. Yeah, that's the trouble with that, is it's a really spectacular piece. Yes,
it is. And so the forgiving aspect of it is because it is asymmetrical. There are symmetrical elements within the piece, so those have to be perfect. But within that, if you are a stitch off here or there with the placement of those pieces within the piece on the background, that's not going to make or break you. So you can fudge things here or there. That doesn't matter as much. And those sorts of things I wouldn't, I'm not going to collapse over. But this one element, with the wrapping and my limp Rhodes squares is just, I can't abide by it. I know I can do better.
I don't think I've ever heard in description of a stitched needlework piece, limp and willy-nilly used in the same paragraph. I'm not sure that's happened.
I have to figure out, so this is the issue. I have to figure out how to photograph it so that I can show you what I mean, because it's black thread.
Right.
So it doesn't really reflect, right? And then, so it's really tough to capture what it is that I mean. So I'm going to try.
Okay.
So that I can show you. But because basically it's as if you stitched a Rhodes square with no tension.
Okay.
Or here, this is a better description. If you were doing a Rhodes square, but you were doing it on the edge of a canvas, so 3 sides of it were stitched into the canvas in the holes, right? So they all held, and the other side had nothing.
Oh.
So right where you were supposed to stitch it so that you would, the side would go to the side and then the far diagonal would go to the far diagonal, it's not got anything to hold into. So it just kind of flops around there.
All right, let me see here. Let me see if I have this now. Limp, willy-nilly, and flops around. Okay, got him.
I'm telling you, if you could see it, you would know what I mean.
Okay. No, I'm good with limp, willy-nilly, and flops around. I'm good with that, I think. Yeah. Yeah, if you want to send a picture, fine, but I think just those three.
Try. I fixed it, and the fix itself is really ugly. I'm not going to say anything because all the fix did was just tension it up a little bit, but it's just ugly. So I really, this one I'm like, no, Christine, you can do better than this. This is unacceptable. The piece deserves better. So rip that out and do it over again. So that I think I'm going to do. The rest of it, though, really beautiful piece. It truly is. That's my Debbie Rowley bit of the day.
Well, that's quite a little story. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If anyone's looking for a really challenging piece, I really do recommend it, despite the fact that it's just this one section that I am just particularly having trouble with. The rest of it, they're really, really fun. Really fun.
In a willy-nilly sort of way.
No. The rest of them are not willy-nilly at all. They're very well put together. It's just this one that's just, it's vexing me. Yeah. For somebody that does like Hardanger or something like that, this probably would be the easiest thing in the world. Mm-hmm. And so this is where I like Debbie's charts too, because she gets to that part of the chart and she says, all right, everybody, hold on. So
hard hats and safety belts.
That's right. I can't imagine I'm the only one that's got floppy Rhodes squares. So just saying.
Well, you're the first I've heard of, so I'm putting that in the ledger. Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's okay. Like I said, I'm not afraid to admit it. Well, not everything I do is perfect. Sometimes I have to do things over, and that's fine.
Okay. Well, do send a picture. Rake some, if it's black on black, rake some light across the surface, and we'll get the texture. It'll show up.
I'll try. Try.
Open up the shadows a little bit. It'll show up. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, I have to do that, and I have to figure out how to photograph metallic. So once I figure out how to do those two things, then you'll be getting a slew of photos.
I'm pretty, I think metallics, I haven't tested it yet, but I think a point source light from a bit of a distance to the side would bring out those sparkles. Just haven't tested it yet. Yeah.
And I suspect halogen lights.
Yeah. Point source. Mm-hmm. Has to be a point source, and then I think you bring it out. Yeah. And halogen is a point source as opposed to fluorescent or something like that.
Right.
So, yeah, it has to be a point source, and if you can fire it through a cone of some kind, I think it would do it. I think it would reflect off the facets and give that sparkle.
Yeah, because as soon as you try using a flash or anything, what I may try to do is an off-camera flash from the side and see if that helps.
Make a snoot. I think it would be too broad of a light. Yeah. Yeah, it's got to be from a point source. So just tape a card, construction paper, make a kind of a snoot around it.
Okay.
So you have a smaller opening, so the light has to go through a smaller opening. Fiddle with that. I bet you can get it. I bet you can get it to sparkle a little bit. Yeah.
I think yeah, because for the piece that I'm working on, I will need to do that because it just, you lose so much otherwise, and otherwise I can't tell the story without being able to depict that. So I'm going to have to figure out something, and then just have that as the photo box, really, and leave it set up someplace.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, someplace where your dog can't get to it.
What are you trying to say, Gary?
Nothing. I just, suggesting that your dog has an affinity for stitching is all. And
yes, that sparkled, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
So for anyone who didn't notice, I posted on Instagram yesterday a photo of a sad spool of Krynic confetti blending filament that my dog had helpfully cut into stitchable lengths for me with her teeth. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, her version of stitchable lengths is about 4 inches.
And tangled.
Well, yes, and I did because my husband was just going to throw it out, and I said, no, I bet you I can find something in there that's stitchable length, and no, there was not a single piece, and I really did look. I thought for sure there would be something, and no.
You actually tried?
I did.
From that wad?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
All right. Credit for that. You're just endless today. This is impressive. So, okay, here's the dilemma. All right. We're calling this the lady on the plane. So I've been on the road better parts of the past 3 weeks. And yes, I'm sick of hotels and restaurants. Don't let anyone ever tell you that you can't get sick of hotel rooms and restaurants, because you can in spades. So flying home from the second trip, as if it matters which trip. Just thought I'd throw that in. And I sit down, and across the aisle, up one seat, is a young lady in the 20-ish range, mid-20s, young lady. So we know we have a millennial stitcher out there.
Yes.
And she is stitching cross stitch of some kind. And it was in a hoop, so I couldn't tell what the design was. And she was just doing some background, just solid field background.
So did you go over like a creep and like peer over her shoulder and ask her what she was doing?
I'm getting to the, I did not know, I was not a creep. Okay, I was not a creep. All right. We came up well short of creepiness.
Okay, good.
Okay, but here's the story. So I see her stitching, and well, that's interesting. So, and of course, I don't have any Fiber Talk cards with me, because that would be foresight and planning.
That would mitigate the creepiness.
Yeah, and so, that's, yeah, whatever. So on the back of one of my magazine business cards, I write Fiber Talk Podcast and the URL. And I just tapped her on the shoulder and I said, hey, you might be interested in listening to this. And she had headphones on, so she pulls one off the ear. And what's that? I said, well, it's a podcast about stitching. You might enjoy it. Okay, thanks. And she sticks it in her bag. Okay? And went back to her music and whatever she was listening to. And I understand that, because I don't generally talk to people on planes. Matter of fact, I never do, except for that instance right there. So then I'm sitting there and I'm just so dog tired. I don't want to read. I don't want to. I had stitching in my bag. I'm just ragged out tired. So I'm just sitting there listening to a podcast and basically watching the front of the plane, just get me home. And so obviously, I have an interest. So I'm looking over, watching her. And she's stitching. She's doing two strands. It was Ada cloth, 2 strands. And I thought, man, those are long lengths, but whatever. So then she finishes a thread and takes it right down to the end, and no scissors come out. And then she goes to her bag where she has her threads and pulls out a thread.
And she ties it? No.
It's a full length, like a DMC full length.
Mm-hmm.
Piece of thread, like not full length, but I mean that sucker was, 3 feet long.
Okay.
Long thread that she had obviously pre-cut. So she takes it out, and then I'm expecting her to tap on the end and pull 2 threads out, or however many threads. I didn't know at the time how many threads. No, she kind of messes with it with her finger and gets 2 threads to separate from the other 4, and then pulling, like extending your arms out to the side, pulls the thread to separate it, and then puts her teeth on the thread to hold it, gets another grab closer, and pulls it again. And of course she's done this apparently several times, because she was quite good at not getting it all tangled up. She knew when to stop before
unwinding it.
Yeah, she knew when to stop so it didn't get all tangled. And then so she had her 2 threads, but she didn't separate them. She just stitched them as however they came off. She stroked them down a couple of times to get them to unravel a little bit, but they were still twisted around each other. And put them in her needle and started stitching. So she was stitching 2 threads on Ada, no scissors, and the cloth was quite loose in the thing. I wanted to just go over there and grab that thing and pull it tight, in the hoop. And so I sat there and I thought, at what point do you offer advice, or what point do you just keep your mouth shut?
That is a good question.
And see, that was the dilemma. So through a couple of threads, I kept my mouth shut, and then the little voice inside me said, you already bothered her with your little business card thing. Keep your mouth shut and stay in your seat. So I did. But I was thinking, in situations like that, when does it become appropriate to offer advice so she could have better success? Because she's stitching these 2 things, in this field of stitches, as you can imagine, is pretty rocky. It's not nearly as smooth or as even, and the luster of the threads is not coming through, all those things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, and then I'm thinking, all right, now if I were female, maybe it would be a better situation. But I'm male, old enough to be her dad, on a plane. So I just opted for shut up and listen to my podcast. But I did wonder, at what point, when you encounter people who clearly could use some help and would benefit from it, do you say, hey, can I offer a suggestion? I don't know.
Okay. So, all right. Let me think about this for a minute. I think, all right, here would be the way that I would approach it if I were you. If you didn't have any stitching in your hand or on you, when I started the conversation with saying that this was going to be creepy, there was a reason for that. Because it can be for men to approach women that in any way, which is sad, and that's no reflection of you. It's just unfortunately sometimes women are just socialized to pre-assume that someone that is going to approach them out of the blue doesn't have a good reason in mind, especially somebody that's going to then solicit them by handing them a business card with something written on the back of it. Okay?
Yes.
So I would suggest that you keep Fiber Talk things on hand.
They're in the bag now. They're in the bag.
Okay. So this is the thing. If you walked over and you had a hoop of something that you were working on, it would be a completely different thing, because you would immediately then have a bond. It wouldn't be, hey, I'm a person of adult, stature, and I'm going to tell you what to do. It would be, hey, I've got the same hobby as you, and I'm doing something. Can we talk about it? So immediately it's a little bit disarmed, and it becomes a little bit less of an authoritative figure telling her what to do, and it's more of a collaborative thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I would approach it literally just you holding your work in your hand makes it a little bit easier, because it gives you a little bit of credibility because you have something in your hand to show that you actually are doing something. And it makes it so that you're not just totally making this up. Right?
Yeah, right.
And then a lot of it becomes sort of calibration, watching the person's reaction to see if they're even open to this. And if it were me, and I'll tell you exactly how I would do it, I would probably laugh a lot, and I would say, and this is the truth, can I tell you a secret about threads? Because I used to do it exactly the way you did until my friend told me, and then I felt like a dummy, because there's a lot easier way to do that. Because you taught me that trick too, because I was never taught that. And I used to separate threads exactly the way she did. And then you said, just pull the thread. And I said, no way. And you said, yeah, just pull it. And I did. And it was like a magical thing to me.
Yes.
So I would approach it in a goofy way, but that would be just me. So, and then kind of see how that would be taken and then go from there.
Okay. Okay. But I was smart to just shut up and sit down. Yeah, I think.
I don't know. It's hard to.
Because see, I hate seeing people who could benefit from a couple of simple little things and likely enjoy the stitching more. And you know, I hate. To me, it was kind of a missed opportunity. But then again, I just really felt like it would have been creepy. Yeah.
It would depend. Like, again, I really think even just you holding your stitching in your hand would erase the creepy factor, because then you would be two people sharing a hobby as opposed to, you know, a person saying, let me show you my etchings. You know, it would be,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it comes across that. And it's easier for a woman because there's not that, you know, it would be the same thing for, it's not a woman. If it was a woman approaching a young man, it would be the same thing. You know, like when we used to do aquariums, for me to go into Home Depot and see a young man trying to figure out how to do plumbing, for me to walk over to him and say, by the way, young man, I can see you're having some difficulty figuring out how to plumb your toilet. Would you like me to show you how to do that? That would have been very weird.
Yes. Yes.
But if I had a handful of plumbing things that I had just picked up because I was plumbing my toilet, and I could say, oh, I could see you're doing the same stupid job that I have to do. Do you want me to show you what parts you need?
Yeah.
Do you see how that makes a difference?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So I needed a prop. I needed a prop approach. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Because then you're comrades as opposed to, you know, the person who's like soliciting like that. Then you become the person in Home Depot who's, are you a homeowner and can I help you with a home security system? you know
Yeah.
those people, like, that's so weird.
Yep.
But that said, all of those things aside, I think there's also something else that's very important. People's reactions are going to be 75% about them and 25% about you. So no matter what you did, no matter how you approached it, even if you approached it from the most, from the least aggressive, the most fun way, you know, if she is not somebody that takes direction or wasn't interested or was tired or just wanted to sit, no matter what you did, it wouldn't have made a difference. So I wouldn't take a rejection as any, you know, I wouldn't be insulted by that.
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm trying to say. You know, like if you make the offer to say, hey, you know, that I have a funny a story about separating threads like that. You know, if they're not interested, then, you know, just move on.
Yeah. Okay. So next time then I clearly need to break out at least a needle. No, more than a needle. That would not be good either, would it? But yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, it breaks down the barrier. Yeah.
It does. I think so. I think so. And I think it's asking permission. It's saying, you know, would you like me to show you an easier way of doing that? Because then you give them the opportunity to say, no, thank you.
Yes.
And you get to gauge their interest too, because if you can say, you know, you'll be able to see the oh, would you please, or sure.
Yeah, that one. That
you
one.
know, and then then you show her how to separate threads and you move back to your seat, you know, and then get on with your stitching. I don't know. I would be curious to see what other people say about this, because, you know, I'm just one person, so I don't, and I tend to be very shy. So I may not be the best judge of those things. Okay, but I'm a weird combination. I'm very shy, but I'm also very curious, and I like to learn things. So I might be open to somebody teaching me something, but I'm also very socially anxious. So
well, see, and that's part of it, because that's where you and I are very much alike, because I am like that too. And it's so weird that we do this twice a week, but because that suggests we aren't. But no, I'm not particularly outgoing at all in social situations. And matter of fact, I avoid them if I can. I mean, I just don't. I mean, I go to trade shows and talk to people all day long. It's part of my job. But when the day is done, I'm quite fine going back to my room and just being left alone.
Right.
So, yeah. So, no, I know what you mean there. Yeah. Okay. All right. I get it.
I think it's open. I think it's open. And I'm curious to see what other people say. Because I think it would depend on the person.
Yes.
And I think it's really a matter of reading the other person's, reaction.
Yep. Okay. And lady who I handed the card to, if you actually do listen, now you know in great depth what I was dealing with, one seat back and across.
Right. So that A, Gary's not a creeper. B, despite the fact that he's not a creeper, he spent an inordinate amount of time thinking about what your reaction would be if he were to offer you help.
Yes.
And yet that's not creepy. So you see how complicated this gets?
I know.
It really does.
I know. Yeah. It occupied more than enough time on the flight, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
You know. So, okay, well, there's that. It'd be interesting to see if others have suggestions or just thoughts.
And I think it depends on, like, if it was, this is where, like, you get the grandmother pass. Because if anybody had the temperament and the age of a grandmother, that person would have full license, or a grandfather, quite frankly, to walk up to any person on that plane and tell them exactly how to do anything, and no one would ever tell them no.
Yeah.
Is that not true?
Oh, it is. Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, they could probably sit down next to them for the next 4 hours and teach them exactly how to do their entire piece. And I don't think the person would have the guts to say no.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah. I don't know. It's just, and of course, in this day and age, you just get a little flinchy anyway. So.
And it's not a shame, because all you're trying to do is, like, help somebody, and you're afraid to do so because you're afraid that they're going to interpret it,
Yeah, it is.
Incorrectly.
Yep. That's all it was. Show her, hey, if you pull it like this, put these two together, put it in your needle, stitch it like this, you'll be amazed at how it looks. And, and tighten up the cloth in the hoop. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I could have gone on because she needed to wrap her hoop. And, there was just a whole series of things. But, and it's one of those things where, don't you have a needlework store to show you, but then you just don't know.
But you don't.
Days. Yeah.
I didn't have, and I was going by what I knew from when I was a child. And I probably watched my grandmother do it that way. And, I mean, really, when you said, wait a minute, what, you just pulled the thread, dummy. and I did it, and I'm like, whoa.
I did not say dummy. I just...
No, you said it with your mind.
Did I?
Yeah.
Yeah, you imagine things too.
Yeah. But honestly, for somebody who's been doing it as long as you have, that is, that's like, not using scissors. It's like, of course, use your scissors. Silly. Why would you not, I had no idea that it worked that way.
Yep.
So.
Hey, till somebody shows you, there's no way you would know.
Exactly.
Yep. So, so that was an interesting experience. First one for me, quite interesting. All right, now we're going to have to, we got to get a couple things in here. We're going to run out of time.
Okay.
Man, never have enough time. Ever. So, coming up a week from Wednesday is what we're calling the official start of the Sarah Braizear Stitch Along. Delayed a month and a few days, and now official start. Well, people still waiting on linen. And being patient, understand, nobody can control any of this. But so we're going to start, whatever starting means, we're going to start next Wednesday on the 11th. And several people have already started because they have their material. And some of us, like me, I just put the edged the fabric last night. And tonight or tomorrow it's going to get washed and ironed and marked and whatever I'm going to do, and off we're going to go. So people have started, so that's good. and it's been a lot of fun watching people stitch along and see what they have. And others are getting ready. You've already got some thread into the cloth, and most anxious to see how this comes out, because I think you're onto something. Now that I see what you're doing, I think you're onto something here. So we're just going to say that we're starting on the 11th, but it's not like ready, set, go, and off goes the gun and everybody hits it. So for people who don't have their materials, you're not missing out. I know one thing at Looms is the finishing in time to be eligible to get the chart from Nicola and eligible to be in the drawing for the sampler that she's offering a year from now. Don't worry about that. Nicola will make it so everybody has a fair chance. You don't need to worry about that. And so we're going to call the 11th the start, but it's basically what we'll call a soft start, where you jump in as soon as you can or when you can, and we'll all be off and running. But we want to get going because now this Thursday, Christine and I are doing an interview with Jackie Morris, who is the person who stitched the sampler the model that Gene Lee and I videotaped when I was out there. And so the person who did all that stitching is Jackie, and we're going to talk to her. And that's been, from day one, been going to be our kickoff for this stitch along, is to have Jackie tell about her experience. We'll learn also about her stitching career and all those things, but also her experience with Sarah Braizear, and I hope a bunch of tips, things that she caught or worked on or that will be helpful, and just how she went about stitching it. So that'll be next Wednesday. So we'll have the regular Wednesday show, though probably abbreviated, and then we'll just tack on the discussion with Jackie after that. So, but I'm just really anxious to hear from her because she's done several Hands Across the Sea samplers models, and she said she's working on another one right now. So obviously experienced, talent, and clearly from that video you can tell very talented stitcher. So much to learn from her. So we're going to start. We're just going to get going, and then I think Kim Young has some prizes as we go along, and we just want to get some of these things underway. And the linen and the threads have been holding us up. So we're just going to start next Wednesday. And if you don't have your stuff, hang in there. You'll get it, and then you'll just know that much more when you start to stitch. And yeah. But we're going to go.
I think that's actually helpful because just the little bits that I've been able to pick up from people starting, I think have been helpful to me.
Yes. Yeah, there have been several things that people have done. And I know one thing that many people have stitched at one line of the border all the way around, and a celebration that in a sampler that big, it matched up. Yay, now I can go. Mm-hmm. And somebody posted the other day that it sounded like off by enough that, she was off by enough that she didn't know if she should tear it out or get another piece of linen. I'd tear it out. I wouldn't buy another piece of linen.
No.
But she was off by quite a bit. And then 2 or 3 people have shown basting techniques that they've used, 2 or 3 yesterday or over the weekend, using the same technique that Nicola described for high count linens, by putting little basting lines and then hash marks every 10, I think it was every 10 threads. And so techniques like that people have used. Yeah, there's lots to learn. That's the thing about this stitch along. It isn't lots to learn about Sarah Braizear. It's lots to learn about stitching in general. That's what's been cool. Yeah. Lots of tips from people, and the other part, as you and I have discussed, and you've preached many times, lots to be learned from the mistakes too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I just even the little bit that I've done, I started with just marking the center of the piece, and then I thought I was going to grid it, and then figured it's way too big to grid. And then thought I would just mark, somebody had done single stitches or, half crosses and then a full cross every 10. And on the linen and the color that I'm working with, that was completely not working because you couldn't see it well enough. And then I started using pins because I was too lazy to grid it, and went through that and started doing the border. And as I'm going on, the more I do it, the more I'm realizing that I'm just going to have to grid this piece.
Yeah.
I think there's just no two ways around it because I'm driving myself crazy because I'm just counting things a million times. So by the time I end up, why wouldn't you grid? Because you don't want to sit there and count it to grid it. So, but by the time you count something 7,000 times because you don't have a grid on it, you might as well have just gridded it.
Right. Exactly.
I think that's where I am with it right now, where I think I'm just going to sit and put on a good movie and just grid the entire thing because I am driving myself insane.
Yeah. But you're learning. Yeah. But I know. Yeah, I can imagine on that dark cloth counting. It's like, oh, shoot me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but some good examples. We've learned a lot, and I know I intend to have this thing finished in time to be eligible for the drawing. But even if I don't, already I've learned so many things about doing samplers that it's been worth it to me, and I haven't put one stitch into my cloth yet. So, lots of things. All right, so that's the deal for next Wednesday. We'll have Jackie Morris with us. With us. We'll, like I said, just tack that on to our normal Wednesday discussion, and then we'll be off and running. And I know that Lakeside is shipping linen, and I'm sure they're working as hard as they can. They've backlog of orders, and they want to keep their customers happy too. So, and there's nothing the stores can do. Trust me, there's nothing any single needlework store can do to move things along. They've done all they can. And calling and bugging them doesn't help them. It just chews up time they could be dyeing fabrics. So it's just have to be patient, and we'll make this all come together. People just relax. We will all come together. It's not a race. There's not a starting line and a gun that goes off and everybody runs or anything like that. It's just stitching we enjoy. And, if you don't have something to stitch, I have about a half a dozen projects that need to get set up. You just give me a call. I'll fire them off, and you can get them all set up on stretcher bars, set up the linen, find the center, all those things. I'll tell you what needs to be done. If you're just bored, I can occupy your time. Our guest Sunday will be the extremely talented Gay Ann Rogers. Got lots of questions for her. Going to be a good conversation. And that's it. We'll be back next week.
Take care.